Humanising NDIS, words are vital, bridging the gap between professionals and families. I use the word professional a bit tongue-in-cheek in my title because I refer to the people that work at NDIS, who some are fabulous. My presentation is going to be completely different to everything else you're hearing today. I'm neither a scientist nor a medical professional. I'm just a jaded parent with extensive incidental knowledge who isn't afraid to make waves. First disclaimer, I don't work for NDIS. I'm going to say some things that they wouldn't like. I'm pretty sure a little alarm goes off in the office when my phone number rings in. As I was so kindly introduced, I am Kimberly Murdoch. I'm a wife and a mum, and an autistic professional human. Both of my kids have additional needs. I've been dealing with NDIS since 2014. I've worked in aged care, disability, corrections, mortuary, and various other boring jobs. I'm a wedding and funeral celebrant. I love a good speech and a good fight. I haven't shied away from using my voice to help others find theirs, or in place of theirs if they don't have one. Now I'm using my decade of experience dealing with NDIS and other government systems for the benefit of others in a paid capacity. Second disclaimer to the families here. I will be using the word we throughout this speech, but I don't have a child with Sanfilippo. I will never pretend to know what it's like to parent a child with Sanfilippo, and it would be grossly insulting to pretend to. My oldest child has MPS I Hurler syndrome. They're non-binary and use they/them pronouns. They went through enzyme replacement therapy and then bone marrow transplant in 2017, age 2, shortly after diagnosis. That child is now 19. They successfully completed Year 12 in mainstream education, have a Certificate 3 in early childhood education, are living independently, working 2 part-time jobs, and despite significant ongoing medical issues, most importantly, they are happy. This is all thanks to Professor John Hopwood and the research team here in Adelaide. And there's not a day that goes by that I am not infinitely grateful that treatment exists for hurlers. So while I'm not a Sanfilippo mum, I am an NDIS mum, and I will say we, and I hope that's okay. So let's talk about NDIS. The NDIS provides funding to eligible people with disability to gain more time with family and friends, greater independence, access to new skills, jobs or volunteering in their community, and an improved quality of life. The NDIS also connects anyone with a disability to services in their community. This includes connections to doctors, community groups, sporting clubs, support groups, libraries, schools, as well as providing information about what support is provided by each state and territory government. The NDIS supports over 500,000 Australians with a disability to access the services and supports they need. This includes supporting approximately 80,000 children with developmental delay, ensuring they receive the supports early so that they achieve the best outcomes throughout their life. Sounds dreamy, right? I wish that were the case. I'd happily be out of half the job, because half my job is spent dealing with and fighting with NDIS and the powers that be that determine how much funding a participant gets to meet their basic needs, let alone achieve all these fun things that I've just mentioned. There's an unrelated story about my business name. My wife and I have a disability support business. Animal Connection is a huge part of her work, along with 20 years of training and experience working with tricky kids, hence everything is plausible. Irrelevant. How many scientists here, or doctors, have written a grant application? Probably most of you. Imagine writing that application and saying, please can I have some money because it's important and I just really need money. How successful do you think that application would be? In my experience, when parents first encounter NDIS, they start out nice, grateful, and NDIS will absolutely take advantage of this and give you the minimum. I dearly love and appreciate when I am proved wrong, and it has happened, but sadly it's not often. Most people I come across working within NDIS aren't even aware children can get dementia. Yet we know there have been over 100 neurodegenerative conditions identified as causing a childhood dementia. NDIS funding is based on evidence of disability. In recent times, they have shifted their focus to functional capacity over the diagnosis itself. Sometimes even with the evidence, you still have to fight. I can't imagine receiving a diagnosis of Sanfilippo for my child and then having to navigate NDIS, fight for the funding you need to meet their daily needs, and then fight for the needs you can't even imagine them having yet. And then fight some more every time the generation causes a significant increase. It's just not fair. So my tips. The benefits of a well-written lived experience statement by a parent or carer cannot be understated. Our norm as parents, no matter who you are, is to portray our children in their best light. But what we need to do to even get close to appropriate funding is to paint a picture of just how rubbish Sanfilippo can be to someone who has likely never heard of it. So as contrary to our instinct as this is, you have to be brutally honest. For many years, I've been sharing a lived experience statement I wrote for my younger child. He has the 3 A's: autism, ADHD, anxiety. People take this and personalise it and submit it with their evidence, and it's been quite helpful getting people better funding. Because NDIS don't often believe a mere mortal parent though, a good functional capacity assessment by an occupational therapist is vital. It needs to be conducted by someone who at least understands childhood dementia and the progression. Ideally, someone who knows Sanfilippo, but I understand that's probably going to be rare. Also, get yourself a good advocate. Shameless plug. Be it a support coordinator or someone similar who can either work pro bono or charge in a different capacity building line. NPS is a marathon, it's not a sprint. This person is a team member who can fight alongside you when your strength is high, or fight for you when you're exhausted, or just don't feel like dealing with the government BS. We know life is hard enough without fighting the multiple government systems for our kids' basic human rights. Recently, I embarked on my most intense advocacy case to date for dear friends of mine. They live with Sanfilippo. This is Jordan. He just turned 29. He's 6'4" and 95 kilograms. He's currently very physically active and reactive. However, his brain functions at approximately the level of a 15-month-old because of Sanfilippo. Jordan lives at home with his mum and dad and requires 24-hour active care, usually by 2 carers at a time. He's intense, beautiful, but intense. As the effects of Sanfilippo had a greater impact on Jordan, a review was requested for further 2-to-1 carer support and active overnight supports. We know that with Sanfilippo comes the brain degeneration causing hyperactivity, interrupted sleep and insomnia. His review request was largely denied due to lack of evidence. However, I believe it was more due to lack of understanding of Sanfilippo. They did approve 6 months of active overnight support and direct Sharon to have Jordan undertake a comprehensive sleep study and education to improve his sleep hygiene. That doesn't actually sound like anyone that's ever dealt with dementia, let alone childhood dementia. Unfortunately, Sharon had no option but to follow this direction and take Jordan for a sleep study, which of course was deemed a massive failure within about half an hour. No one this advanced is going to comply while 22 electrodes are carefully placed on particular parts of your brain and body, or scalp and body, and various other meters are applied, and then go to sleep. So then Sharon invited me to join the fight. Planning ahead, I helped Jordan's care team lodge another review for change of circumstance late last year when we knew there was about 3 months funding left. According to the NDIS Participant Service Guarantee, they will decide whether or not to conduct a plan review when requested within 21 days. So 21 days after I lodged the review documentation, I started phoning. And I was kind. I gave them 21 business days. I phoned fortnightly first, then weekly, then I escalated it, then I complained, then I rang daily to escalate and complain. Despite my very best efforts, the funding ran out. It wasn't until Sharon told the local office in no uncertain terms, for anyone who knows Sharon will understand, that she would drop Jordan off to their office on Friday afternoon and invite the media to come along, that their funding was quite swiftly rolled over all of a sudden. Sharon was lucky enough that her youngest son took annual leave to help care for Jordan before that emergency rollover happened. I don't share this story with any pride because I do feel like I failed Jordan and his family by not getting that done in time. I share this story because despite having plenty of evidence from the doctors, carers, speech therapists, occupational therapists, sleep study nurse, continence nurse, and even a specialist behaviour support practitioner who detailed Sanfilippo, and despite me having a very simply broken down explanation of the funding needed down to the very large dollar, according to their price guide, NDIS still didn't understand or validate Jordan's needs. One mistake I made was mentioning that Jordan received services from palliative care. NDIS seem to sigh with relief when they hear palliative care. Seems to be their get out of jail free card, because the state government is responsible for palliative care, not the federally funded NDIS. Unfortunately, as with all things, POWER care is chronically underfunded and the service is beyond stretched. NDIS doesn't want to pay for services it thinks POWER care should supply. And we know that POWER care can get involved almost as soon as there is a terminal diagnosis. But because NDIS, as with many people, think palliative care is just end of life stage, if NDIS believe that POWER care are there, that the client must be end of life. And that then, their care falls under the medical banner and is not funded by NDIS. I believe in never coming to the table with a problem unless you have a suggested solution. I would love to see Sanfilippo Children's Foundation develop a document that can be provided for parents and carers to add to their evidence for submission to NDIS. Maybe even something that can be customised so it's not generic. This needs to be comprehensive yet simple to understand, using the key NDIS language and the key medical information, bringing together the most important aspects of Sanfilippo syndrome and the care required for our children. We shouldn't have to fight as hard as we do for the funding we need, but it's the system we have, and at the moment, it is grossly flawed. With appropriate funding, there would be better outcomes for families as a whole, and often that has a flow-on effect to a reduced burden on the wider medical system. And also, with an appropriate funding, just a small bit of the stress that we live with can be alleviated, and our children could lead the lives that they deserve to.